Greetings and salutations, and thank you for clicking on the video. I do appreciate it. This video is a retrospective. We're going to tell the story of EzeeLinux, talk about what it is, and maybe talk a little bit about where it's going. I think it's a good time to do this because just the other day, over the weekend, the number of subscribers on the YouTube channel crossed 40,000. It's now at 40,259. That's an amazing number, and it just blows me away that we have this many people out there in the world who have taken the time to click that subscribe button and they want to see more videos that I do. It's just, for me, it's amazing, and it is a validation of sorts, and I will explain why it is a validation as the video rolls on. So I want to thank everybody who has subscribed. A lot of the folks who are watching this video probably haven't been around from the beginning. They don't know where this started out or why I do it, or they don't even know what EzeeLinux is. And so that's one of the reasons I'm doing this. And the other reason I'm doing this video is a chronicle of sorts, because this has been a very interesting experience, and there are observations that I would like to share about EzeeLinux and what it has done for me in my life. It's changed me in many different ways. And it's hard to talk about yourself. I've stopped and started this video probably about, I don't know, 10 times now, trying to figure out how to begin. So I'm just going to wing it. I'm just going to roll through it. We're going to talk about it for a few minutes. So first of all, let's talk about this YouTube channel right here. You notice that it is my name, Joe Collins. And the reason why is because I've had this YouTube channel since 2008. And it is grandfathered in, which means that when I started my channel, Google did not own YouTube. And so therefore, you can't change the name on it very easily. Any YouTube channel that was created after a certain time, you can name it whatever you want. You know, Farquad P. Schmidlap if you like. But mine is hard to change, so I have left it at Joe Collins. It hasn't been changed to EzeeLinux, although I'd say 99% of the content that I post has to do with EzeeLinux. This is still my personal YouTube channel, and so therefore I leave my name on it. And I do reserve the right to occasionally post a video about something other than Linux. Did a video not too long ago about a turntable. Did a video about my audio system, that sort of thing. You will occasionally see something pop up that is not Linux related, but most of it is these days. So when I first started this channel, the entire reason I did it was to share stuff with just a few people that I was talking to on the internet. And it was a way to host a video for them to see. I never had any intention of it being some sort of major YouTube channel or making money off of it or any of that stuff. It was just, the idea was just to be able to show some folks who had posted videos about their stuff, my stuff. And that was audio related stuff. So what I did was I went back through the videos and I looked, and I was trying to figure out where the serious Linux videos began, and I tracked it down to right here. So these videos are from 2015, now late 2014, early 2015, and it would seem that I went all Linux all the time in January of 2015. That is when my last Windows machine gave up the ghost and quit. Up to this point, I was running Ubuntu like 12.04 on another machine. I think I did a video about Ubuntu 14.04 before this, but I can't find it on the channel, so this is the last one that I left up. And from that point forward, you'll notice that it's nothing but Linux, and that is because when I started doing these videos, they took off. I posted this video, how to install Ubuntu 14.04, and it's got like 137,000 some odd views on that thing. That was a big wake-up call for me. It was like, wait a minute, people are very interested in this. So I started doing more Linux content. The more I did, the more feedback I got, the bigger things were, and I kept rolling with it. Previously, before I did that, I had almost completely given up on doing YouTube, for a lot of reasons, mainly some of the shenanigans that Google was pulling back in 2013. Actually, yeah, 2012, 2013, they changed the way that the advertising revenue worked, and a lot of people who were making X amount of money, all of a sudden you didn't make any more money off of it. And while it's never been my intention to do this to make money, it still was a bit of a bummer, because up to this point I was doing videos about audio stuff, mainly about records and turntables and stuff. And I got enough off the YouTube channel to be able to go buy something to talk about. And then when they did that, all of a sudden all the money dried up, and it was like, oh, what do you talk about? So I soldiered on with it for about 6 months, and then I kind of let it go. And then when I started posting videos about Linux, it took off. And this was not the first time that I had posted videos about Linux. I had posted videos about Linux going back to 2009. None of them are on the channel right now. I've removed a lot of those old videos because, number one, I had no clue what I was talking about. And number two, they're not really pertinent to today, and nobody cares anyway. So a lot of those have been taken down. But the response was mainly within this community of people that I talked to on YouTube. It was a YouTube community kind of thing going on. No dreams of growing past a broader audience. But Linux, all of a sudden, people started watching. They started paying attention, and I started paying attention. And that's when I realized that what was missing in the Linux community was somebody out there who was focusing their content 100% on people who wanted to learn how to use Linux but weren't computer experts. At that point in time, it had come down to a place where Linux was, for really, if you watched followed the Linux content, it was for geeks. It was for people who like to play with computers, and they weren't thinking of it in terms of, gee, I'm going to use this every day for my daily driver machine. And then really what changed that for a lot of people is Ubuntu 14.04. Ubuntu 14.04 came along and everything worked. Up to that point, you couldn't say that about Ubuntu. I mean, if you looked at Ubuntu 12.04, for instance, when it first came along, there was a lot of issues in there. And there were just certain things that didn't work very well. And Ubuntu 14.04, everything worked. So that was the big tip. As far as I was concerned, it was the tipping point. It was like, okay, now I have something that I can really use all the time. So I started using it myself. And not only that, it was the first time that I had come to a place where I was looking at Windows 7 and I was looking at Ubuntu 14.04, and I went, okay, I don't need the Windows world anymore. I can get out of that. That's a big deal for me, because prior to the mid 2000s, 2010s, right here, right where you're looking at, I would have been considered a Windows fanboy, because I had worked with Windows for years, both at work and at home, and used to set up automation systems that ran on Windows. That was my career way back a long time ago. And the thing is that for me to switch to Linux, it was a big deal. But I had been playing around with Linux since, I don't know, 2006, 2007. First heard of Linux when I was working for Gateway in 1999. So, yeah, I mean, I've been working with computers pretty much my entire adult life, going back to my first computer was a Commodore 64 in like 1985 or 84 or something like that. So yeah, I've been working with computers all my life, but the focus on Linux really came, like I said, just a few years ago, and just said, oh, this is it. I'm not going to do Windows anymore. Not only do I not run Windows anywhere, I don't do freelance work on Windows machines, which is what I did up to that point. I used to work with people all the time and help them fix things or install things or whatever the deal was. And I said, I'm not even going to work on this anymore. I'm done with it. I just don't like it anymore. I would rather use Linux. And the community aspect of Linux was one of the things that attracted me to it. And not only that, it was the freedom. It's about being free, and it's about doing what you want to do with your computer and not having somebody else tell you what you can do with it. And there's the economic thing about working, using Linux. Linux is definitely the cheaper way to go. At this point in time, I've got 4, 5, 6 machines that run Linux. They're all on a network. They're all very happily chugging along, and my entire family uses them, and it didn't cost me anything except for the cost of the hardware to set all this stuff up, which is pretty awesome. So I'm very happy that I made that decision. I mean, I kind of knew when I saw Windows 8 that I was never going to move on to it because it was garbage, and Windows 10 is worst. And I was, for me, no, I'm not using that crap. So when I started posting about that, just kind of chronicling my journey with it, people got very interested in it. And time rolled on, a couple of months down the road there, and I realized, I said, hey, I think there is this opportunity to help a lot of people and to sort of become a spokesman for Linux and offer some way to help folks. And that is when I came up with the EzeeLinux idea, which was just simply a web page and continue outreach through the YouTube channel to spread the word about Linux and trying to help people along. So before I started all of that, I actually took a class. Now, I've been working with computers for a long time, and I had been working with Windows for years, and I had a couple of certificates from Microsoft, a TSP, an engineer's certificate, and that sort of thing. But I really didn't have any cred when it came down to working with Linux. So the course that I took was one through edX, and it's called Introduction to Linux, and it's a very great basic Linux Administrator 101 course, and I took that. Took quite some time to do that, to get through it, because I was doing it online and I was doing it at home. And I passed the course. I did not pay to get the certificate because they wanted $350 at the time, and I didn't have it. So, but my final exam grade was like a 97, so I felt like, okay, now I know what I'm doing, and so I can start this. So the next thing that happened is that started this web page here called EzeeLinux, and EzeeLinux for me was that was a hard thing to do because I am HTML impaired. I'm getting much better with it now, but for years and years and years, I just couldn't wrap my head around working with web pages, so I had to have some help. And the person that helped me first time around was a fellow named Gary Thomas, who was a fellow radio veteran, had been working radio for years, and he helped me get started with that. And I wrote the stuff and put it together. And so the first incarnation of the EzeeLinux page was basically a static page that just sort of said what things were, and that was all it was. And then something really cool happened. I was just getting to a point where I was saying, I've got to do something with this web page. And that's when a fella named Jeremy O'Connell came along, and Jeremy was really liking what was happening with the YouTube videos, and he said that he would love to work with me. And he has his own company called CyberWeb Solutions out of Atlanta, Georgia. And Jeremy is a whiz with what's called middleware. Now, I knew what that was from my days in automation. Middleware is a situation where you have one system and you need it to talk to another system. And you need to have software in the middle that translates everything. That's what he does. He's a very smart guy to come up with that sort of thing, because in order to write middleware, you have to know everything about this computer and everything about this machine, and they have to be able to talk. So the CyberWeb Solutions company is got a lot of, it's like an octopus. There's so much stuff going on. He does a lot of stuff for businesses, clients, things like that. And he was in the process of going through what I had already done, which was dumping Windows out of his life. But he was doing it on a much larger scale. He was doing it in his business. And so CyberWeb Solution is, like, these days, last time I talked to him about it, 100% Linux powered. Awesome. And now that's opened up new doors for him, because he's helping other businesses to get off of the Microsoft products and go into the world of open source. Fantastic, amazing, wonderful stuff that he's doing. Anyway, Jeremy helped me rebuild the web page, and he worked with me because I was such an idiot about it, to learn how to actually do things on my own. And we have just really hit it off. We work very well together, and we started working together on creating software. The first project that I kind of helped a little bit with was called Connect to SSH. And Connect to SSH is a piece of software that uses SSH to do all kinds of networking and data transfer. We did a video about it. We started doing the Mr. Server and Mr. Desktop videos, and most recently we completed a project called CYA. And CYA is a program that essentially backs up your entire Linux system, and then allows you to restore it if the machine messes up, and does it in a little bit of a different way. There's a lot of other programs out there that do that right now, but we wanted something that kind of fit our vision of how it should work, and essentially that program came out of a year-long OCD fit. So we have done a lot together, and Jeremy has been a very good advisor. He has worked in the background, and as we roll along here, we're learning more and more about Linux on the desktop, and it's been a great experience. And also now starting to get into the development stuff, and CYA has been very nicely well accepted in the Linux world. And it all works in Bash. I mean, that's the whole point. We have this thing between us. It's like we really like the fact that there are all these tools that come with every Linux computer that you ever worked on, and let's put them together. Let's make them work. It's that old Unix philosophy. So that's what we do. So yeah, Jeremy O'Connell has been a big part of the EzeeLinux project. Thank you, Jeremy, for stepping up. I think it's been very mutually beneficial working with Jeremy at CyberWeb Solutions. If somebody comes to me and they ask about doing something with Linux in a business or setting up a server, I just send them to Jeremy. He's the man. He knows the deal. And there are very few people in this country that I would say really get it as well as Jeremy does, and especially in the South, this part of the East, the eastern and southern part of the country. There's a lot of Linux heads out there toward the West Coast. The closer you get to Silicon Valley, there's more people. But out here in the East Coast, well, there's doesn't seem to be a whole bunch. So Jeremy's been good to work with, and I wanted to take a minute and thank him for sure and explain what his role was. And there's 8 episodes of Mr. Desktop and Mr. Server now, which is amazing because it's very difficult for us to get those lined up and get them going because Jeremy is a very busy man. So you can check those out on the channel if you want to. The next thing that I want to talk about is somebody it's been a real honor to work with, and that is Matt Hartley, who has a project called Freedom Penguin. And Matt approached me when Freedom Penguin began. We were discussing something else by email back and forth. And here's Mr. Hartley right here. And so we have been working together for quite some time now, since Freedom Penguin started. I don't remember the exact date. And my contribution to Freedom Penguin is the occasional article at this point. I haven't written one in a long time. I'm sorry. I know it's hard for me to get something together like that, and I've kind of let it go. But lately, Matt has been very kind, and he's been syndicating the videos to freedompenguin.com. So thank you very much, and do appreciate that. And now, my contribution to Freedom Penguin is small. Freedom Penguin is really big, with a lot of people who do a lot of stuff here. I noticed that a bunch of my videos have popped up. I'm not the only contributor. There are many, many people here who contribute to Freedom Penguin. And yeah, I'll accept your cookies. Get that bar out of the way. Thank you. So I want to say thank you to him. You know, Matt has been around Linux for a long, long time, and he goes back working. His start working with people on internet-based media goes back to Chris Perillo. He was also the co-host of the Linux Action Show for quite some time after Brian Lunduke left. And so this is a guy that I have been listening to going back for a very long time. Long time. And it's an honor to work with him. It really, really is. So check out freedompenguin.com. That's what that's about, okay? That's what Freedom Penguin is has to do with. You can explore that and find out more about that yourself. So, yes, and through Matt, I got to work with Brian Lunduke a little bit. We did a show with them one day, and Brian Lunduke is, I think that Brian Lunduke is one of the greatest spokesmen for Linux. He's a great speaker, talker, writer, and very good motivational speaker, and of course he's very famous for that in the Linux community. And I don't need to tell you about Brian Lunduke, but I will suggest that you look for his channel. Now, Brian tends to talk about more advanced stuff, so if you're brand new to Linux, Brian will start talking about stuff that you may not understand right off the bat. But even if you don't understand Brian, he's always fun to listen to. So yeah, Brian and Matt Hartley, two of the best people out there in the Linux community, and I've really enjoyed getting a chance to work with them and know who they, get to know who they are. So let's see, is there anything else that I wanted to show you and talk about? I don't think so. I think we've pretty much covered all of that. So the last part of the little video here, I want to talk a little bit about why this is a validation of sorts. And those of you who have followed along this long are people who care. So I can go ahead and talk about this because for me, it's a big deal. There is an anniversary of sorts which is coming up here in the next couple days that I'm not happy about. And that is my 10th anniversary not working in broadcasting. I'm talking about good old-fashioned radio and TV. And it was 10 years ago that I got fired from my job. And it wasn't because I was a bad guy who wasn't doing a good job or a crappy employee, at least I like to think that. It was because the company that I was working for at the time, they restructured the management. And they didn't just get rid of me, they got rid of my boss too. And then they brought in some other thing. They did something else completely. At first I thought it was all me when I got fired because I was like, huh. And believe it or not, that was the first time in my 20 some odd years of working in radio that I had ever been just flat out fired. Just like blindsided fired. Like, come on back here, I want to talk to you, and go sit down in the office, and boom, you were gone. You know, you're getting a paper box and cleaning out your desk. And so, anyway, it was amazing. And I never went back to radio. I never could get back in the door. It was almost like, you're riding along on a bus and you're really enjoying the ride, and then somebody opens up the door and throws you out, and the bus takes off and just leaves you sitting on the side of the road. That's the way it felt. And I thought, at the time, it really didn't concern me too much, because I thought, well, another bus will come along, I'll find another job, and that'll be the end of it, and I'll be right back in. And it never happened. It just never did. I looked for, I think, probably, as far as radio jobs are concerned, I have applied for maybe 2,000 or 3,000 jobs over the last, the first 5 years. After that, I gave up. And just said, I'm not going back. There's no way in the world. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the radio industry just changed a lot. In 2008 in the United States, there was an economic crash when the banks, they crapped out. Remember that? Well, the same thing happened to the big media companies the year before, but nobody noticed. It happened to all of the big broadcasting and media giants. Their stocks went to nothing. They had penny stocks. And that was right in the middle of that was when I got fired. So between that first crash that nobody remembers and the second crash, which was when the banks had to almost failed, between all of that happening, the economy just really did a number on me and my family at that time, because I lost that job. And after that, we started a couple businesses. We did, at one point in time, I had an insurance company. And right about when the big crash happened was when we were getting launched with the insurance company. And then what happened is that, well, never mind. It was getting to a point where we were paying more to actually run the agency than what we were selling, because nobody was buying anything in January of 2009. Let me tell you that. Nobody. And anyway, I've done a lot of odd jobs and bounced around, and I'm not going to get into all of that for the last 10 years, but there's always been this little part of me that's been really a little bit bitter about the way that my radio career ended, because the industry had changed so much, and I kind of contributed to that change, because one of the things that got me to where I am today is my interest in automation systems. And I'm, contributed to the fact that radio stations now only have maybe 1 or 2 real live people in them, whereas when I first started in radio, there was 10, 20, 30 people who concerned themselves with what was on the air, and it was live 24 hours a day, and there was actually a person there that would answer a phone, and they were pushing buttons, and they were making everything happen, and it wasn't a machine running the place. And anyway, a lot of bitter feelings still left over, and I've pretty much forgiven all of the people who were involved. There's nobody on my punch on site list anymore. I'm kind of over that. But it was a big identity crisis for me, because all of a sudden this big chunk of my life that had been a huge part of it since I was a teenager was gone. And that's what I want to talk about with this project. I think that people who end up going into broadcasting, it's not so much an ego thing as much as dig me, I want to be a celebrity. For me, it never was. It was always two things. Number one, I just wanted to be the guy who got to push the buttons and run the big machine. That was it. That was my driving force to be in radio. When I first started going to school for radio back in the 80s, I didn't go to become a disc jockey. I went to become an engineer. It was only after a few engineering classes that I changed to actually wanting to be on the air. But I think the overriding thing that is just this need to share, this need to be a conduit of information and or art, because when you're playing music for somebody, you're turning them on to art, and if you're teaching them about something or you're giving them information that's useful to them, it's a great feeling to be like, okay, I'm the one who actually put that together. And YouTube never was intended to be that, but it has become that for me because of the EzeeLinux project, because it has touched a lot of people around the world. It's opened up doors. I get to talk to people that I would ordinarily just not be able to talk to. I was interviewed on Bosnian radio a couple of weeks ago. Guy contacted me, said, would you like to do the interview? Yes, I did it. It was amazing. So for about, right there in the middle of Bosnia, this country in Europe, I was on the radio. That's pretty amazing stuff, and there's no other reason for them to want to talk to me other than the Linux thing. So it's been a validation. It really is for me that, okay, I'm still able to share and able to do something positive for other people. Because that's what I got out of the radio experience and television. It was never for me, it was a 50-50 mix for me being in radio. A big part of it was working with the technology and the equipment in the background and doing quote-unquote engineering. And I'd say another half of that was the actual being involved in it. And I went as far as I could go with radio. I started out as a part-time DJ and worked my way up to being an operations manager. And when you're an operations manager in a radio station or a cluster of radio stations, what that means is that you're in charge of everything except sales. That's it. You're in charge of the day-to-day operation of the station and keeping things on the air and keeping Zox and the Xerox and keeping the rock rolling all the time. So I kind of went as far into radio as I wanted to go because I never wanted to be a general manager. I didn't care about sales. I don't care. I don't want to deal with sales. I don't want to have to do sales. Now, as an operations manager, I'd have to work very closely with the sales department, but I didn't have to do it. And so that was as far as I wanted to go. So truthfully, if the truth be told, I did it all in radio at one point in time or another. And it's nice to know that there's more out there. And I guess the thing that I really like about doing what I do now, as far as the YouTube videos and other things, is that I'm totally in control of it. If I decide tomorrow that I don't want to do this, I just don't post a video. That's it. Done. I just don't have to put anything up. And it's not that big a deal. Radio, it's a job. And the other thing about being in radio or television is that you're very conscious of what you're saying all the time, and you want to be careful that what you say doesn't offend anybody or it doesn't offend the advertisers, and very, very conscious of that. And what's beautiful about this situation, I don't have any advertisers. I don't have any sponsors. I don't even have any patrons because I don't do a Patreon. And yeah, I probably could make a lot more money if I would try and win over a sponsor or Patreons. People certainly come after me all the time these days and want me to be part of their network or whatever the deal is. And I just tell them, no, I'm not interested. Why? Because I'm independent. And being independent means that I can say whatever I want. I don't like to, I spent 20 years feeling beholden to, Jay's Carpet Paradise up on the corner because they bought $1,000 worth of ads. I couldn't say Jay's Carpet sucks, and I bought a remnant in there, and then it shredded in 2 days. I couldn't do it. It would get me fired, lose the account, would be bad all the way around. But now I can say whatever I want to. I usually generally say good things about most of the people out there in the Linux community, but if I decide that I want to be whatever about it, I can. And that's important to me. I mean, like I said, worked in radio and television for 20 years, and those are things that get on your nerves after a while. It's like, oh, I really can't get in here and be myself and do what I want to do. So this has been a great experience because of that. And I have rambled on for quite some time about all of this. Probably the last thing that I want to talk about is, to anybody who cares about such things, is, you know, the difference of providing content on a medium where people can immediately contact and critique it and comment on it. And that's what YouTube really is. YouTube has that comment section below this video, and they have it on every video pretty much, unless you turn it off. And it's interesting to see what people will type down there. And you know, I have talked a little bit more about that on my videos than I probably should have. It's just simply because for me it's an interesting social observation what people will type down there. I do not take anything that anybody says personally. I just don't, because what you say on these videos doesn't reflect on me as a person at all. And are these videos perfect? No. Do I make mistakes? Absolutely. One of the things that you're going to notice as you go through my videos is that, you know, if I put any written content on the screen, 9 times out of 10 there's some glaring typo in there, and I don't see them. And mainly because of the fact that I'm usually in a rush to get everything together to do a video. This is only a small part of my life. And the other thing is that I suffer from a form of dyslexia where I've pretty much learned how to read by reading the shape of words. And so if one letter is off and it's generally close to the same shape, it's very hard for me to proofread that. It's very difficult. That's always been a problem with me my entire life. But I always figure that if the content of the video is good enough and that you're getting something positive out of it, do you really care if everything is typed perfectly or whatever? So I don't pay that much attention to it. But every video I post that has a lot of written content, somebody sees one and they have to say something about it in the comments. And so therefore that's what the deal is with that. Now, as far as those comments are concerned, yes, I have pointed them out, but I just find it interesting because when we worked in broadcasting, we used to sit around and we used to wonder what people thought of what we did. It would take a long time for us to figure out whether something worked or not. If we changed something, if we put on a new show, we'd do it for 2, 3, 4 weeks and we'd know for sure what the deal was. Because after a while you can tell the advertisers will come back to you and the listeners, you get the comments that trickle in and stuff like that. But on YouTube it's instantaneous. If you don't like the video, you're going to tell me immediately, which is pretty weird. And so anyway, the other thing about comments is that one of the things that I wanted to make sure that would happen is that my videos would have family-friendly comments on them. I wasn't going to allow people to go on there and use strong profanity, and I wasn't going to allow the infighting and the bickering back and forth that I was seeing when I started doing this. It just wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to let it happen. And I do read everything that people post for a comment. I try very hard to keep up with it. I cannot answer everyone. There's no way in the world. I look for question marks. If you have a specific question, I try and answer it. So that has been nice. I mean, just to try and have a community feeling here where we're not going to let somebody come in and attack you and that sort of thing. What I have learned about commenting on comments is that if I do that, people think I'm complaining, which I'm not usually. I'm not complaining. I'm just pointing out the comment section. If I say something negative about something negative somebody said to me, they automatically say, "Oh, keep going, man. Don't stop. Don't get discouraged." I'm not discouraged. I don't care. You can say whatever you want to. I hold the power. I can delete you. It's like a comment comes up I don't like and you say something particularly nasty or show your ignorance in one way or the other and I don't want to deal with it. Delete. Gone. It's my YouTube channel. That's the way it is. But anyway, it's been interesting to see what people have to say. Overwhelmingly, what's in the comments is positive. Overwhelmingly, what's in the comments has been constructive. I have learned so much by being able to talk to people through the comment section and read their observations. It's been really, really wonderful. But you do have that 1% out there. And if you're starting out in YouTube and you've never done a whole bunch of this before, as it grows, you're going to get more and more of it. And one thing to keep in mind is that those who feel it necessary to point out everything that you did wrong usually are doing that to glorify themselves. It's not because they really know any better. It's just that they are using that opportunity to write paragraph after paragraph in a comment to make themselves look huge. And, you know, like, hey, I'm smarter than this guy who's doing the video. Those who are just being nasty are those who are just nasty people who do those sorts of things anyway, trolls. And you know what I have found out? 9 times out of 10, when I click on those videos, when I click on those comments, I look and see whether the person has anything, videos on their channel, whether they actually provide content to YouTube. And the nastier the comment is, the less likely it is that they've actually posted video 1, that they have any video up at all. Because those who provide content, we deal with this every day. And the very last thing that I would do would be to go on somebody else's YouTube channel, whoever they were, even if they were posting something I really hated, and post some nasty, non-productive, crappy comment or correct everything they say. And believe me, there's a lot of videos out there on YouTube that I disagree with, and I don't do that. So, but thank you for the comments. Most of them overwhelmingly positive, wonderful. And one thing I did want to point out before I stop this video is that if you look at the channel here, and I'm looking at it in an incognito window, you look over here and there's all of these people that it's recommending. Like Brian Lunduke. Of course, we've already talked a bit about Brian. Chris Ware is here. Quids Up is here. And there's so many that Linux and other stuff. Total OS today. Most of these guys were not around when I started doing this. There were people who were providing Linux content that got sick of it, got tired of it, couldn't deal with the comments, couldn't deal with the pressure, whatever the reason is, and they stopped posting. And that's one of the reasons that I, put it up there right up front. Hey, if you don't, it's fine to disagree with me. Knock yourself out. Have a good time. But if you're disrespectful, if you're posting profanity, intense, really bad profanity, you're going away. I'm not dealing with you. I'm going to keep soldiering on. And these guys obviously can just, they have that broadcaster's heart that says, hey, 90% of the people like it here. I'm not going to pay attention to it. And they keep going. So I'm really thrilled that there are so many channels now offering content about Linux, because makes me feel better that I could get up and walk away at any time. But when I started doing this, there weren't that many that were doing it from the absolute total new user perspective. And that's what I'm doing. All right, I have rambled on long enough, and I want to thank you for listening to this video if you listened to the whole thing. And I don't know what's coming up next. I don't know what I'm going to do. Probably just continue on the way I have. And I would encourage you, if you're new to the channel, to go back through and look at some of the old videos, because like this one, this All Ubuntu All the Time, I only got 600 views in 3 years. And if you're, aching for new content and I haven't posted anything, you want to go back and look. There's a lot of really good information in here, and you can check that out yourself. Also, I maintain 2 big playlists here. One of them is called Linux Talks, and the other one is called Linux Tips, and you can load those up and you can look through all of the videos there. Usually the ones that end up in there are some sort of useful information. And yes, after some point in time, a lot of these old videos, if I come across them and they don't apply anymore for one reason or the other, they're going to go away. I had to do that the other day. I deleted a video that I looked at and I said, well, that project doesn't even exist anymore. It's not even worth talking about. So I do keep up with it. What's here is mostly valid and pertinent. All right. I'm done. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. 40,000 people. We'll just keep working our way forward. And just, wow, that's all I got to say. I'm just blown away by it. So thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who's helped and contributed as well. Check out EzeeLinux on the web. Check out EzeeLinux on Facebook. And check out EzeeLinux on freedompenguin.com. Lots of really cool content popping up there right now, because Matt is kind of doing some cool things. And that's it. All right, gang. Talk to you again soon.